All right, let's do this.
So everybody who's watching me, I don't know, how am I going to do this? Michael Icon, the Mike King.
I mean, just call me what you're used to calling me. Like, if you want to call me Icon, that's fine. I don't give a shit. Like, they're all me.
we got Icon, and you are the first guest on Legend Has It.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. This video series has been fun to watch and like also kind of relive some of these things from your perspective. Cause there's a lot. I was thinking about this, like the way I've known you is kind of strange. And what I mean by that is like, we've only seen each other like a handful of times in life, you know what I'm saying? And so like I have all these experiences where, I don't necessarily know how you experience them. And so watching these videos has been really interesting just to see what your perspective has been on all these things. So it's cool. So thanks for having me.
Of course, man. And I'm glad you enjoy it. Every time I get somebody who says they enjoy it, it's very motivational, because in the beginning, you need that motivation while you're building it up. You need to know people, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's someone on the other side actually watching it. And I mean, it's the same thing with music, right? Like if we didn't have that feedback loop of being able to like jump on stage and have somebody hear the bars that we were writing and all that, we probably would have quit a long time ago. So with content, you got to put something out, and you don't know if you're just throwing it into the void or if there's someone on the other side. So, because I do so much in my day life of like content and stuff. I saw you doing this. I'm like, yo, I got to show.
And speaking of everything that you do, so what intrigues me the most about you, I watch a lot of motivational stuff. I like, most notably, in recent times, it's Wes Watson, but it was Gary V, Patrick Bet David. I love all of these guys, and I like the idea of just people being able to create the life that they want. And you are, I think, at least in my age range or people that I've been around, or I think you are probably, there might be another or two, but no one's coming to mind, but you are somebody who has done that, where you went from, I guess I'll say trying to make it in rap, right? Whatever that means, right? Trying to build a big name, or however you want to frame that kind of thing, to becoming what I would consider, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a very successful businessman.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, thank you, first of all. It's been, a long, weird trip to some degree, because just like you're saying, like I'm like a year younger than you, or maybe like not even exactly, but so I was doing the music thing, and I toured a lot of different places, like played all over Europe, played all over the States, played in Australia, played in Africa once. It was weird. But there was a point where I just felt like I'm smarter than this. You know what I'm saying? Like, and what I mean by that is like, I'm smarter than struggling to make ends meet by hustling CDs and like, doing these tours, having money until I get home. And then I got like, save that little bit of money until the next tour. I was like, there's smarter ways to do this, because I've always been someone who's really good with computers and things like that. And so there was like a real strange overlap with this whole thing, because it was like 2006. I got into a bike accident, not even like a cool motorcycle accident, like pedal bike
on the
thing.
bike. Yeah.
And
somebody opened the door.
Nah, my mom had put this bike together and she didn't do it well. And so I was like doing a wheelie over a speed bump, and the front wheel came off, and like I face planted, right? And so I had to get a job to pay my medical bills, because again, like I was just a broke rapper. And so the first place to hire me was this SEO agency, so search engine optimization. And my goal was just to keep the job until I was about to go on my first overseas tour with Dose. in November of that year. And this happened in like July or August or whatever. And so I got the job and I was like, cool, I'm just going to keep it for 3 months. I'm going to use the money to pay my medical bills. And then I'm going to go on the road and go back to what I'm doing. And the work was fun. I enjoyed it. And they were like, yo, I was like, hey, I gotta quit because I gotta go on tour. But my boss was also a musician. He was like, nah, you could just work from the road. And I was like, what?
Oh,
And
wow.
so, yeah, so I just took this heavy ass laptop with me going overseas and doing all this. And long story short, like I just kept going to different companies doing this until my bosses would piss me off and then I'll go back on the road. But then I got a job at this company, this big multinational like ad agency called Razorfish. And I was like, yo, if I stick with this, I could probably make some real money. And in the SEO space, there's this guy, he's like he was considered the most famous person in the space. And I'm on the train with Dose somewhere in like Sweden, and he's like, "Yo, Mike, I know you're doing that SEO thing. My cousin owns this SEO software company." Turns out Dose's cousin is the guy that I just mentioned. His name is Rand Fishkin. So it's like,
Wow.
my worlds just like randomly overlap like that. And
Rand, one more time, the name?
his name is Rand Fishkin. He's like,
Okay.
one of the most famous people in the space. He's like the Gary V of SEO.
Wow.
And
okay.
So I made that connection, and then I moved to New York because I'm from Philly, you know what I mean, and I moved up here because the place that had hired me had just had me on a contract. And so what I did is I went to another agency owned by the same parent company. I was like, yo, what's up? Can I get a job? And I was like, I mean, you don't say, can I get a job? But, I got the job.
Right.
And I was like, cool, I'm going to bring it back to this other company and they'll have to hire me. And they were like, actually, we still can't hire you. So I moved to the city. And then I started getting involved in like the whole speaking circuit and all that. Cause it's like, yo, if I can rap for people that don't even speak the language that I speak, and you know what I mean? Like, that's easy to just get on stage and talk to people about marketing. And so all of that just became a bigger thing. And then eventually, because, we're independent minded people, if we're people that are like rappers like you and me, eventually I was just like, I can't work for nobody else. I got to start my own company. So that was 7 years ago. And,
take me through the process of that transition. So you're working, and now I suppose before you make the decision, I'm going to start my own company, was the salary was getting to a certain level at this point? You started getting, okay, so now you feel like so you're making some money now.
Yeah, I mean, I was, when I moved here, I was like just short of six figures, and then it just like ballooned with every other job that I would get. And I just got to the point where I was working for people, and I'm like, if these knuckleheads can do this, I'm pretty sure I can figure it out. And so what I did is I just put, I saved up enough money where like, if I didn't sell a single thing, I could pay my rent for 6 months. And what ended up happening was like immediately I had 2 clients. And like all I had done is I put like $5,000 in a bank account and I started this business, and it's just been rolling since then.
5,000.
Yeah, that was it. Like I was like, all right, this is what I'm using to start the business. A couple months later, I got a WeWork. By the beginning of the next year, I started hiring people. We kept getting bigger WeWorks. And then eventually I got out of WeWork. We got our own like 7,000 square foot office in Times Square. And then the pandemic happened. We got rid of that. Everybody's working from home. But, it's all been a process.
When you hired people, did you use the model that you were familiar with as you were an employee? Or did you have like your own way of like, I'm going to run this my own way? Like, what was that like?
Yeah. So some part of it was like, all right, there are basic best practices that I need to follow on how like companies work. But at the same time, I was like, no, we need to structure it this way and, really like think about the people that we're hiring. So like I said, I didn't have health insurance because this is before Obamacare and all that. So one of the things that's really important to me is that we pay 100% of people's medical, vision, and dental, like just no questions asked. And that wasn't common at all. You know what I mean? When I first started doing it, more and more companies are doing it now. But, I just want to make sure that people are taken care of and they have the
Right.
ability to like really do things and go places with their careers.
What was that like though? So now you
It's
get like
terrifying.
it feels that way where it's just like, because it's one thing to take that step. Can I make it on my own? Can I succeed?
Hmm.
But now can I employ somebody else?
Yeah.
That's like that.
It's
Now it's like, you
you're
know.
you're responsible for other people's lives on to a certain extent. I mean, at the end
Hmm.
of the day, everyone's responsible for their own life. But as far as like the livelihood that you've promised them, you have to continue to deliver on that, every time payroll comes around. And so it
Right.
can definitely be stressful because, the types of companies I work with, they're like some of the biggest companies in the world, but they're really weird about how they do their accounting. So like, if you'll have like an invoice, you'll say the invoice is due in 30 days. Well, there's no incentive for them to pay in the 30th day because there's no penalties until the 60th day. So if I say here's a net 30 contract, they can pay up until 59 days later and still be okay. And so at the end of the day, those companies are going to do whatever they want, but I still have to be responsible for all these people getting paid and so on. So it can be very stressful, very terrifying, but it's also very rewarding because you're employing these people and helping them do the things they want to do with their lives.
Right. So it's working. So you got people, and what'd you say? You started with like, was it two? Did you say a number? Was it two employees or?
Yeah, at first I started with 2, then I got to 3 real quick, then we got to 5, and then like really quickly we were up to like 15. I think the most we've ever had is around 25, but right now we're around 20. Um, and I'm expecting to grow a bit more this year, but we're in a real comfortable place, and we're bringing on great clients. Like I work with, a lot of name brands that people use every day. And like we work with some of the big record labels. We work with a lot of the hip hop sites that we all want to be on. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
like, and then on top of that, just like big banks and all types of stuff. So it's a really cool experience to be able to like work with people that kind of um impact the fabric of our lives, for lack of a better term.
Would you say that after experiencing the difficulty
Hmm.
of trying to pursue this career in music, that when you stepped into the business field, was there a moment of where you were just like, "Oh, this is it"?
Yeah, I was like, this is easy because it's like, people have money. They're like, oh, I want you to do a thing. Here's money, right? Whereas
Hmm.
everything in a creative experience is like, oh, I'll give you exposure, or oh, why do you think you're worth so much, and so on and so forth. Like I get paid to speak at conferences, and it's so much less effort than doing a rap show, right? Like I
Right.
literally get up and talk. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so, but people are like, oh, I really want you to be here. I love what you have to say about such and such. And it's an amazing experience. But with the business side, a lot of the skills that I cultivated as a rapper is what has made me so good at marketing, right? Like because
Mhm.
with being a rapper, it's very much like how do you stand out? How do you do something that impresses a specific audience? How do you sell a CD to someone who's never heard of you before? Like all of that stuff is way harder than making something rank better in Google or getting someone to click on something or coming up with content ideas. So it's like I did all my training through rap. Like I didn't go to school for marketing. I went to school for computer science. You know what I mean? And so it was rap that taught me everything I needed to know to do what I do now.
It's such a common thread. The whole "I didn't go to school."
Hmm.
I feel that it's almost like school is kind of can be like this limiting thing. It seems that everybody who achieves some level of greatness don't seem to come from that institution.
No, I agree with that. I mean, for me, I don't like I feel like school is for people that don't know how to do what they want to do. I've
Mhm.
always known what I want to do and I just figure it out. Like my first dream was to be a cartoonist. I figured that out. Then I was like, I want to make video games. I taught myself how to code at 12.
Mhm.
Um, Then I was like, I want to be a rapper. I figured that out pretty fucking good. And then I was like, cool, I want to do this business thing. And like it's all about, are you someone who's self-motivated to make something happen? And like you're saying, people that go to school, they're all taught a very specific way to do things. And so when they run into problems outside of that frame of what they've been taught, it's very difficult for them to get to the next level until they teach themselves how to learn. And so when I hire people, I don't necessarily be like, oh, did you go to Harvard? Like, I don't give a shit. I care about what is it you know how to do, or how do you think, or how do you learn so you can figure out things as they come. Like, we live in a digital world right now. If you just know how to do things XYZ way and you're not able to, like, evolve with the times, you're not going to last very long. And so that's why I don't think school is a requirement.
What are your thoughts on the metaverse?
I think it's a cool concept, but at the same time, I think one of the key problems with the internet and social media is that it kind of pushes us away from reality more than it connects us. And so, the same way like people are trying to put a version of their lives on Instagram, the metaverse is just like a bigger place to do that, right? Like, you could be, if you use like a movie like Ready Player One as an example, where these kids go into the video game, they are living these amazing lives, they have these like boosted up characters that can like have these giant guns and and then you go to one of the kids who's like the main character, and he lives in like a tent in the middle of a junkyard. I mean, it's just going to create more of that, like this bigger disparity of people not really being able to make real connections, and kind of like faking the life that they wish they had on the internet. So I'm kind of fearful of that.
Yeah, me too. I feel like it can be worse than drugs, and it's like a combination of drugs and gaming together and tied, because gaming is a very problematic addiction, because it comes with this sense of achievement.
Yeah.
This fault, like you feel like you're accomplishing something.
Right. But you're not really. You're playing a game.
You're playing a game, yeah. Unless you're so good at that game, you can make money from it and do competitions and shit like that.
Right. Or if you're on Twitch and a whole bunch of people will watch you, I get it. But if you're just looking at the game itself and you're like, oh, achievement unlocked, like you can literally spend years of your life sitting there dying while you're like getting these fake achievements.
Yeah. And the metaverse is going to be like, even that's going to be all of that on steroids, because now, in this fake universe, now you're driving the car of your dreams. You're sleeping with the woman of everything is of your dream. And
I mean, it's the Matrix. It's the Matrix. But
pretty much.
Yeah, there was this movie. It was like a Bruce Willis movie. I think it's called The Replacements. And they're everyone like kind of live like everyone is real in the real world or whatever, but they have these things that they live most of their life in. And again, like there's no human connection. Like you literally are in a room by yourself in this machine all the time. And the metaverse is potentially the beginning of that, but there's also like some potential cool use cases around like education and like for people that live really far away, perhaps you can have like a digital experience as though you are actually with that person. But I just feel like what we've done with social media is just going to get worse using this.
Yeah, I could see that. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and go into let's talk about rap. So you decided you wanted to do rap. And let me ask you this first and foremost. If you had to choose, right, which may be a tough question, but what do you think you have more of a passion for? Is it for search engine optimization, or would it be for rapping?
Definitely rapping. I mean, the thing is that like for a while there were parallels in what the outlet was for me. And what I mean by that is like, speaking at a conference is very similar to doing a rap show. Like writing, a dope blog post about something I figured out, like a new tactic. It's like similar to writing a rhyme with a bunch of punchlines. Like, I can't wait to get this out and see how people react to it. So, you know, to some degree, it was like, it was comparable in how I felt about it. But there's just something about the self-expression of rhyming that it just, it's different. You know, you just feel like I've captured something about me, put it in a time capsule to represent me forever, or I've challenged myself in a way to get to the next level with something, or you know, you just capture something dope. Like, you're just like, yo, I'm excited about what I wrote. Like, it's as simple as that. And actually, I want to talk about you a little bit
Sure.
when I explain this. So because when you were talking about Matrix, there was just so many parallels in your story about how you met him and saw him to
Mhm.
how I met you and saw you, right?
Mm.
So I remember this. This had to be either 98 or 99. It was at Rocksteady. I didn't know anybody at this point. Like, I think I was just at Rocksteady because, you know, you go there because you're a fan of rap, right?
Right.
And it was at the let out of Rocksteady, and it was on the pier. And I was walking back, you know, through meatpacking or whatever, because it was over there. And there was this like huge crowd of people stopped at like the corner, probably over where like APT or STK are, or APT was and STK is. And they were all surrounding you.
Mm.
And you were rhyming, like doing your thing that you were doing back in like 99, 2000. And I remember I stopped and like I was like just kind of busting through the people to see like, who is this? And I might have heard you rhyme for like 30 seconds. And I was like, yo, that's the illest shit I've ever heard. And I
Mm.
can't remember, you know, much of it. I just remember you saying something like, um, I climb invisible ladders with no hands. And I was like, what? Like these, I was just like, yo, I've never heard anything this ill, right?
Mm.
And that moment, it just like really resonated with me. I was like, yo, I gotta get better. And there are creative levels to this that I didn't consider, right? And you know, this was before I was coming to New York regularly. So like at that moment, like that 30 seconds of hearing you rap, I was just like, all right, I got to get better. And I was just like, cool, let me just step it up, like be more creative, yada, yada, yada. Like, you know, because at that point I was like, I love Lyricist Lounge, I love Wu-Tang, I love um, Company Flow. And I was like, cool, like, you know, you got to have bars like a J Treads and shit like that. You know what I mean? But then I heard you, I was like, oh, nah, there's levels to this shit. And
Well, thank
so,
you.
yeah. And so it was like a whole year between this and the second time that I saw you and met you. And I was like telling people, I was like, yo, there's this dude, he's incredible. And but I had nothing to say. I was just like, yo, he's incredible. And he did all these things. And then I convinced a bunch of dudes from school, because I was at Howard University at the time, to like come to New York for a battle. And we went to Spiral Lounge. And
Mhm.
you were there. I was like, yo, that's the dude. That's the dude. And I walked up to you. I was like, yo, you are mad nice. Like let's exchange numbers. I just want to talk about rap with you. You know what I mean? And that's how our friendship started. And I mean, just like you talked about Matrix, I was just like, yo, this is the next level. I need to get there.
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
said enough.
Thank you, man. I mean, yeah, we were reaching like for, you know, there's, it's just that we were reaching for like this larger than life kind of thing. It's like
Mm-hmm.
this passion that is greater than you, and you're trying to encapsulate it, if that's the word, and do your like, you know, the exaggerations are necessary
Mm-hmm.
because you're trying to measure up to this larger than life. I don't know if it's a persona or because everything with hip hop, when you go back to that time, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was just like everybody, we were like lions fighting over like a piece of steak.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and everybody was so like convinced, like no, you don't deserve this piece of meat the way that I deserve it. And
Word.
it's just that constant friction and like, no, but let me show you. And then someone else gets the meat and you're more like, fucking, you don't deserve that. That's mine. And it just keeps building and building. And it just gets so out of control, preposterous, where it just gets to a point where I am the sun, the moon, and the stars, to be modest. You know what I'm saying? Where it's just like, I think that's where
you've got to have that though, because the space that we were all in, it was like such a creative space, but at the same time it was like kind of thankless, right? Like you're saying, like fighting for this little piece of meat. Like, yeah, we're battling, we're like killing each other for $100, or we're like like sitting in a venue for hours watching horrible people rap so we
Yeah.
can rap for 20 minutes. Like, it
Yeah.
was very much that. And at the same time, I kind of looked at, the people that I respected as like, we were like Jedi, right? And we were all just like, we had these special powers that no one else had. And so we showed up and we're just like, cool, whatever y'all are doing, your little stormtrooper bullshit, like, it's over. You know what I mean? And so another thing about you, Level X, and everything, like, that was super helpful for me, being someone who wasn't from New York, coming up, just like showing up at shit, because like you put me down with the crew and I was like, cool, I get on stage, Level X, and everybody's like, oh shit, who's this guy? You know what I mean? Because it was kind of like a established brand. And it was like, people were just like, oh yeah, you're automatically dope because you're down with them. And so it was helpful for me, like, getting into the scene.
Do you remember that? You were part of that double XL thing, right?
The 24-hour MC thing.
Yeah, where they called up and they got to hear us rap.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, that was a dope verse you had on that. I remember.
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah, and that's the thing. So what I was saying before, how like, I know you, we've hung out a number of times, but like it's not like how I hang out with Pac, where it's like,
right,
he knows my family, things like that, right? And so, it's like I'm in this crew, and only person I really knew was like you. Right. And like Blowout, and later Despot, and things like that. And so it was like these snapshots of you, and it's like, all right, this is who we're supposed to be. It's not like there was no album or anything like that. Right. And so, there was this one time where I think this might have been at Pyramid for what's it called, EO Dub or something like that, and like you rocked, and Logic and Reason were there, and like it wasn't like planned, or your thing was planned. It wasn't planned for me to be there. And so I'm like, oh shit, these are more people. Like, this is more of the crew. Like,
they exist. Yeah. The crew. Right.
Yeah. And so like, I remember like I filmed that, and I would watch that video over and over, like, okay, boom, I gotta be, at least as good as this, right? And yeah, I mean, for me, my experience was very much like, cool, that's the crew. I gotta just be as dope as possible. And when I see them, I know they're dope. Like, you would tell me about people, you'd be like, yeah, there's this dude named Influence, this dude named Phobia. And I'm like, okay, like, I've never heard these niggas. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Where are they?
Yeah.
I can't help it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything was very premature.
Yeah.
It's like we didn't know what we were doing. Or like we just knew like there was this light and we deserve it more than anybody.
Yeah.
This is what we felt like. And that was the thing, you know what I'm saying? It was just this raw, unadulterated, and just, yeah, like, and even some of the events were that, because it was like, Bragging Rights was probably one of the more established brands, right?
Yep.
And even that, it was like, he did this string of events and then he couldn't quite scale it. And it stopped. There was supposed to be like a DVD or something that was supposed to follow footage and things like that. And it never quite happened. It was just, this scene was still formulating, so much to the point that by the time Fight Club came out, people like you and me were probably already
We're
like,
done. Yeah.
oh yeah, you're still doing that.
Yeah, I'm
And
tired
and
of
to
it.
and to battle rappers, Fight Club is like, that's like when Jesus was alive.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, so when that shift started to happen, like you were saying, I was getting out of it. But I think I was in the first battle that was for like $3,000. That brainstorm thing they had in Seattle.
Okay.
Um, so I was in that and I got second place.
Wow.
Um, and like after that, then it was like $5,000, $10,000. I'm like, what? Like, and when you see money like that, you're like, maybe I should do it again. But it's like, if you don't got the fire for battling, you're just gonna lose. You know what I mean? And it's not the type of thing where you can just be like, oh, I haven't done it for a while. I'll just hop in. Like, you'll get embarrassed.
No,
You'll get
you will.
embarrassed.
You really got to be about it. And that's the thing too. Like eventually, when you begin to develop and you begin to mature, the passion is going to go from, I have to, like, you're trying to reach people, you're trying to say something.
Hmm.
The desire to put somebody down kind of starts to diminish, because
Yeah,
battling is very, it's very like direct, like it's
it's very
this person,
linear. Yeah.
yeah, these few people, I know what I'm going to say to him, and I'm going to say to him, and I'm going to say to him. And it's like when you no longer care anymore, it's like,
Yeah, it's difficult to muster the I don't know, the will to put together bars like that, especially when you're going on more creative journeys where you're trying to like uncover things about yourself, or like write a story, or just do something interesting.
mhm,
And the more that you're like, hey, rapper, invisible rapper, I have random lines for, like, you just get bored of it. And but the thing is, like, you watch a lot of these guys like Disaster and the Saurus and all these other guys. They grew up watching us. You know what I
mm,
mean? Like, and there was a little bit of overlap where I was still kind of in it, and they were coming out, and they would just come up to me like, "Yo, I loved your battle from this, and when you said that, and blah blah blah." And it's just like, it's real cool to see that we had influence over what is now. But
it's yeah.
I don't feel the need to be like, oh, let me prove myself in this era. Like, I like to watch a couple of those here and there and like enjoy it, and that's enough. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like, oh, let me be somebody's rap pen pal and write like 1,000 bars for them to spit
Yeah,
in front of people over no beats.
yeah. Well, to me, I mean, I very much love the sport. I love what it evolved into and what it became. Um, it's actually kind of surreal for me, because it's like I'm much more humble these days,
Hmm.
you know, as a grown man. Like when I was uh doing that and making that name and making that noise, I was, you know, 19,
Hmm.
18. Like my first battle was Shabam Shadiq. I was at 96. You're talking like, if it was 96, 97, 16, 17.
Hmm.
So, but now when I watch it, it's pretty surreal, where it's like, wow, like Disaster may have came up watching me. Like
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Nah, but that's real. Like, because there were sites like mcbattles.com that would like post our videos and all that, and those hooked battles, like specifically the one where you battle like Jen and all those other people, those made the rounds pretty heavily, right? And
Right.
so there was a lot of stuff that we did that got seen and is part of our legend, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of those guys, they had Scribble Jam battles to watch, and they had our stuff, and they had like one or two random old Eminem battles to watch, and that was it. And
Right.
then they created their own thing as people started to realize, like, oh, this internet thing will work really well with this type of content and so on. So
What
it's not surprising, but it's really cool to be a part of that.
There was a fun story. One time, Awkwards was on. Geez, it was MySpace, and he was
Hmm.
sending me like he was sending me a message, and I was talking to him but reciting Eminem's um the Stan song. And I must have got through like 3/4 of a verse before he realized what was going on. So by the time,
Oh
but by
man.
the time I was like, so yo, I heard your girlfriend's pregnant too. I'm about to be a father.
Yeah,
And
that's funny.
he's like, oh, I don't have a like, I don't have a girl or whatever he said. And then I'm like, if I have a daughter, guess what I'm gonna call her? And and he's like, what's that? And I'm like, I'm gonna name her Bonnie. He's like, oh, that's nice. No, I read about your uncle Ronnie too. Yeah, he
That's
finally got
funny.
to a point where he was like, oh shit, I'm such a fucking dork. He got to the whole thing.
Now, awkward is I mean, obviously he crushed it in that scene, but definitely he's one of those people who was, very much watching all of us, like, because he used to hit me up
Yeah.
too, he used to hit up Tone and all these type of people. And again, like, you know, like when you look back at it and as it's happening, you're just like, oh, why are you bothering me? But that's how this works. Like people learn from the people before them, and they engage with people and so on. So I think it's real cool that these kids became who they are. It's really
And
dope.
that's the thing, like with being young and pursuing this and being in this field,
Hmm.
and just artists in general, I feel that there is such a sense of, and that's one thing that kind of, I guess, pushes you away or turns you off about it, because there's such a sense of entitlement.
Oh, of
There's so
course.
much entitlement, and look at me, and all of these different, everything is me, 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 me. And
Hmm.
like when you get that attention or whatever props, it's almost like it's expected.
Hmm.
It's like, yo, you know how fortunate you are, like to have somebody admire you or appreciate you.
Yeah.
Like that's is such a huge deal. Um, but his art. Oh, let me ask you this: when this was going on, what was YouTube at? Like was YouTube a thing like that? Because I knew that my name was getting around, and it wasn't because of like YouTube.
Uh YouTube was a thing, but I don't think we had our stuff on it. I think people were hosting videos on their own sites. And that's what I'm saying. mcbattles.com. I think that was a site that Tone had worked on. I don't remember if he owned it or not, but it had the videos on it. And so, people
YouTube
weren't
is not a place to go to see him.
right. And so, um, like people that knew about mcbattles.com were going directly there, but people weren't discovering battles by accident the way they are now. And
Right.
I mean, that's the key difference between the early 2000s and what people have now is just that everything is so available. Like there are so many battles that you did, that I did, that someone has footage of somewhere that's just like never going to be surfaced because they're not thinking about it like that, or it is and they don't remember our names and they're on YouTube and we can't find them. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just we were in an era before everyone had a smartphone that took video and could capture everything. And so some of that stuff just isn't available. But, now it's just default. Anything you see, you grab it, you put it online, you share it. And so people are just discovering things more as a result.
Where do you where are you today with rap and
Yeah.
or hip hop, whatever? Like
Yeah.
in reference to what you do, your career, are you trying to balance it? Is it hard to, it must be hard to pursue.
Yeah.
If
So, I mean, I was going to ask you the same question about your evolution, and we can get to that in a second. But for me, I kept threatening to make a record for years, right? Like until the one I just dropped in August, I hadn't dropped a record in 12 years. And it's difficult because, there's just such a high opportunity cost for me to spend time on music. Cause it's like, I could have made X amount of dollars with that time. Um, but now I was like, no, I need to really make this a focus. And I just really wanted to make a record I was proud of. And so I made this EP. It's called Iconic. Um, and, with my evolution, it's not necessarily about trying to impress people. And that's not to say the rhymes aren't impressive, because they are. But, before it was very much like, what can I say and how can I say it so your mind is blown by at least every other line. Now it's just like, I got shit I want to say. I'm gonna say it and I'm done. Like there's no me writing, 100-bar verses like I used to, just so I could be like up there spitting acapellas that blow your mind and shit. Now I'm like, I want to make a good song, say what I want to say, continue to be technically impressive, but don't let that overpower what I'm doing.
The
Right.
message and the
Yeah,
point. Yeah.
exactly. And one of the things you said in one of your videos is like, a lot of underground rappers, or whatever that means at this point, a lot of like lyrical rappers will be so focused on the bars and they don't really have like any character to them. And I my early stuff definitely can fall into that category. As I've like evolved, it's been more character forward, but the bars are still there. And so yeah, I mean, my goal now is just to like do things I'm excited about and then use my marketing special powers to get it out there as much as I can and see what we can do with it. Because it would be far easier for me to do music if it was like a legitimate revenue stream. And so that was part of why I bought undergroundhiphop.com. It's part of why I'm building this new website called bestrapperever.com. And I'm just looking for ways to like monetize this in a bunch of ways where it's like, cool, I got my agency that's doing what it does. Let me make rap make me make money too, so I can like justify working on this stuff.
Harder though, isn't it?
Definitely. But the results are better, obviously, than what I did before, where it was like, put out a record, press 1,000 copies, try to get people to buy them. But now, like, because I'm building websites, there's a variety of different ways to monetize. Like you can monetize on ads, you can do sponsored content, you can do, you can sell merch, and then you can also like, sell your mailing list. So there's just a lot of different ways to monetize that are beyond just selling people music.
Got you. And the iconic is out already.
Yeah, and so I'm also taking a different approach with that as well, right? So what I realized is, because all music is digital, you have a lot of opportunity to iterate. And what I mean by that is, like, when people put out software, they put out what they call the minimum viable product. So, does this thing work, right? And then they continue to change it. So like, when you use Facebook, features change every couple of days and things like that. That's this whole idea of like, iterative changes to products. And so you're starting to see people do that with their records. And the best example of that is Kanye West, who he'll put the album out and then he'll completely change a song, or he'll add someone to a song, or pull them off the song. And so what I did with Iconic is I put it out without any features. And there have been instances where like I've changed the line here and there, or we got a better mix or arrangement or whatever. And as my features have come in, I'm updating the record. So I got Little Fame from MOP on the track. And so that's going to be updated. I got Music Soul Child on the track. That track's going to be updated. I'm trying to get the best rapper ever from Philly other than myself on it. But that's still in the works. And so the reason why that's a viable, or why that makes sense to me, is because every time I update the record, that's a reason to check the record out again. And so you inherently have new content that you can talk about with the record. So that's going to be my approach moving forward, just to like, kind of maximize what I do with the records, because I've always like made a record, put it out, promote it for a month or so, and then kind of get tired of that. This inherently gives me a reason to keep talking about it.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a really good strategy. And how's it going so far?
It's cool. I've sold more than I sold when I sold CDs. And I still haven't released any videos yet. I've got a few videos already done. I'm going to do videos for every song. And so it's just kind of like prolonging the rollout to some degree.
So the availability is it's on streaming platforms.
It's not on the streaming platform. It's only on Bandcamp. When all the features are on, then I'm gonna put it on the streaming platforms. So it kind of acts as a mechanism for the fans you already have are going to check it out and support it in the short term because they're like, I want this right away. And then the people that you haven't reached, you can reach once it's on streaming, and you kind of give it its own rollout. So when I do that, that's when I'm going to do the whole like press coverage thing. I'm going to do some billboards. I'm going to roll out the videos and all that. So it creates, again, like just a longer rollout with the record and more reasons for the people that do want to buy it to buy it. So I mean, it's not like a perfect approach. It's my first time doing it, and I'll keep learning from it.
Right.
But it was a really good way for me to come back after 12 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it must be nice now too to know how to maneuver, because that was the thing. Like we had to seek out like all of these like specific individuals for every aspect of what you're talking about. Magazine people, a publicist. Well, I guess no, the two separate things, because you're trying to get write-ups, but then you're like, if I can get the publicist, then they'll get me the write-ups, and then maybe they can get me placement for MTV, and I get like, you got to be like this Renaissance man. You're like, it's out of control, crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, it's the role of several people that you have to do yourself until you get that traction, and then people will be like, oh, okay, well, people like you, so I can help you out too. And it's like a chicken egg thing, you know what I mean? Like you can't get the publicist until you're getting publicity. And it's like, I signed up to rap. I didn't sign up to do all these things, but now I do know how to do all these things because I do them for big businesses. And I also have a lot of relationships. Like I said, like we work with some of the big major record labels. And so I get to see how the major record labels do rollouts for their artists as well. And I get to, you know, because they're not spending a lot of money to do it. They just have the relationships. And, you know, they spend a lot of money to go to radio because radio costs what it costs. But like just rolling out a record, it's very much like, okay, we know these people at these websites. In fact, some of these record labels own some of these websites. And so they're just like, cool, put that on that site. They own some of the playlists and so on. So they're just building up the assets. And I'm like, well, I can build a website. I can start a playlist and get people listening to it. And so I'm like, cool, let's do these things ourselves. So we have these platforms that we can use. And also the people whose music I love, I'm like, cool, let's get you on there. Let's get you on there and so on. It's not just about me. It's about creating avenues for all the dope shit.
Right. And I just lost my. I had a question. Where the hell did it go? Oh, so do you feel that the dream is different though? I'd imagine. Is it still the dream of I want to be on tour?
I mean, it is what it isn't. Like, I want to be on tour, but I only want to do it if we're talking about, you know, a minimum of 500 people at the venue. You know what I mean?
Same thing. It's not that same like, oh, I'm willing to travel in the van and you can get me the crappy hotel room. It's like, no, absolutely not.
So I actually just went out with Chesky a couple months ago, just to like, you know, because I was like, I got this new record. I might as well, you know, do some shows and see how I feel about it. And so it was me, Henri Osborne from Dark Time Sunshine, and Chesky, and this dude named Tor Bjorn, who's like the DJ, who also, you know, he sings, he raps, he plays all the instruments just like Chesky does. And it was cool. It wasn't a lot of people because of the pandemic, but some shows we had a lot of people. And it made me realize like what needs to be done in order for me to do what I just said, like only play 500 minimum capacity. And it's really about building the brand up a bit more. And, you know, like I said, like doing billboard ads and getting all the coverage and being on the playlist and so on. And so that's an exciting challenge. But yeah, at this point, I'm more like, how do I go platinum? And I don't mean that like, you know, how do I sell 1 million records? Because that's not what it is now. It's getting 1.8 or 1.5 billion streams. And so again, this is like a marketing challenge. So that's something that I can do. So let's do that, right? So it's different. It's not about like, I just want people to hear me rap. Like I'm so eager to just rap. It's like I want this to be part of my legacy as a human being. And I want to have as big of an impact as I know how to have with my different skill sets, right? Like you mentioned Gary Vee, who is someone who, you know, kind of invented the whole influencer thing, right? Where he's like, I just do content every day. I slice it up in a bunch of different ways. I'm always in your face. Oh, I got a shoe deal with K Swiss. I got wine. I own this company. I have an agency. For me, I'm like, how can I take all the different things I do and capitalize by building something that no one else can build? And part of that is the music. Part of that is, building kind of this like multimedia empire and so on. So my goal is that, like being my version of like a Jay-Z.
You still have undergroundhiphop.com.
I do. And
Okay.
so I mean that business was a very difficult one to run because I bought it with a lot of debt, right? And so we put a lot of money into it, and then it kind of just devolved into like just me doing everything when I'm running two businesses. And so it just became too difficult to run. And so what I did, I've just like temporarily shut it down. But we're gonna open it back up as like more of a marketplace where you can just sell your stuff directly to people, because we can generate all the traffic, kind of like, if you're on Etsy or something like that. We can drive all the traffic. You just sell directly to the people, and then I don't have to manage inventory. I can focus on doing all the content stuff. Like we started that magazine and all that other stuff. So that's what I would prefer to do, so that we can really make it more of an avenue for people to, grow their own. Like every rapper is their own small business. So I would rather people grow their own business through this platform, and, us just create more ways for people to modernize what they're doing for this audience that we're able to capture.
Yeah, and I'm trying to do something similar myself, and that's why I do the videos, because I'm just like, the perception of what it means to be, I think there was a point in time where it was like, oh, if you're a rapper, and I don't consider myself a podcaster, but whatever, for the sake of conversation, there was this thing where it's like, I can't be a rapper and do a podcast, because then they'll know me as the podcast person, and then the rapper thing might not hit that hard. Well, first of all, if you're that's going to be true if the rapper and the podcaster are two different people.
Right.
So if you're selling them the podcast, the rapper is like this, I'm too cool for school, you know what I mean? But then like the podcaster is like, we see you in your everyday life, and now how are we supposed to believe that? But if you're keeping it, you're being true on both platforms, it shouldn't be an issue. And taught me a little bit about marketing, where it was just kind of like, publicity's publicity. You put yourself out there, you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
It's not going to hurt your other endeavor.
I mean, people really value genuine people, like the authentic person that you present, no matter how it is, right? End of the day, content, like rapping is content. You know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to minimalize it, but when you like, content is just a thing that goes in a thing, right? And so the music you make is one form of content and one way that people experience you. When you do these videos, they're experiencing you in like a more just like a different frame, right? Like you're not like tied to bars and measures and like, kind of swimming in words. You're more just very directly saying what you have to say and how you feel about certain things, and you're sharing stories that resonate with people in a variety of ways. You know what I mean? Like you told the story about how you saw Supernat while you were standing in line. Like who can't relate to a story of standing in line for a club and some weird shit happening, right? Like
Right.
it deepens the relationship that you have with your audience. So it's only a good thing to put more content out there. And like I said, I'm very happy to see you doing it.
Thank you. I remember there was a time where I was trying to figure it out, and you were like, you could use the fitness stuff to drive attention musically.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like my mind couldn't process it.
Yeah.
I could not fathom it. I was
it's
just not there. And I think that marketing and just that whole world was so foreign to me that
mm-hmm.
it was like, no, these two things clash together and they're going to cancel each other out.
Nah, man. I mean, you see it now because you see so many people doing it, right? Like you see
Mhm.
somebody that does some, you know, wild stunt on Instagram, and then you hear of them because of this. They got, you know, 5 million views on this video, and then you go to their profile and you're like, oh shit, they sing too. Oh, they're pretty dope.
Mhm.
Oh, let me follow this person. You know what I mean? So like everything you make is a potential to hook someone in. Like here's a good example, right? Mac Lethal.
Mhm.
He does all these videos, like he's rapping fast while he's making pancakes and all these like, frankly, just kind of gimmicky things, right? Because
Mhm.
he's doing that because he understands how to capture attention. And so once he's got the eyeballs on him, he's like, cool, you like that? Well, look at this. And so, you know, that took him to like Ellen. He had all these different deals. He's been in people's commercials, and that's just created more opportunity for people to know he exists.
Just got to open your mind, and yeah, like the internet has shown people, it shows everybody who you are. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like if you're trying to present something like a certain, trying to present yourself in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
right? In a certain light, automatically you're going to give yourself less exposure because you cannot constantly be that. If you're Mr. You Never See Me and wearing the same thing twice,
Right.
you're gonna either rack up, like you're gonna spend a lot of money, but you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
rack up some serious debt. Where are you gonna keep all of these clothes?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
at some point, you just have to be like, yo, like I am who I am, and everybody else is who the hell they are. And
Mm-hmm.
even these people that are projecting this image of something that they're not, even they themselves, they're realizing like this is all bullshit.
Yeah,
It's all
no
bullshit.
doubt, no doubt.
Where
But that's the thing. Like, as a rapper, you're uniquely positioned for this type of environment. And what I mean by that is, again, like we have been so trained, or we trained ourselves to be impressive. We train ourselves to, in very concise ways, um, you know, deliver something that's resonant for people, right? Like
Mhm.
if you are a battle rapper, or you have been a battle rapper, you know how to make someone go ooh ah with like one line. Like in this environment, you're like, okay, what can I do that's like in 90 seconds or whatever that makes someone be like, yo, let me share this, or I want to follow this person, or I want to check out more of what they do and what they have. So I encourage everyone who's like, yo, how can I make more money on the internet, to really lean into the skills that they've developed as rappers.
Yeah, and that's and just knowing how to. Another question is, you just said something, and it was gonna. Oh man,
If you don't got
whatever.
one, I want to ask you a question. I
Sure.
mean,
Babe, can you get
I've
me
got
that drink, please, from the
many
fridge?
questions for you. So, you know, just going back to the whole rap thing. One of the first conversations I had with you was like, we talked about rap techniques a lot, right? Because I'm one of those
Mhm.
people that when I'm really into something and I'm like trying to improve at something, like I always want to talk about it. I want to talk about the minutia of it, like all of it, right?
Mhm.
And so I mean, I think a lot of rappers this way, like they don't know that they're doing certain things. And, like I didn't know the whole syllable thing. Like I was just doing it, right? Like, and when I was at Howard, there's this dude, his name was Perfecto, and he was really into the syllable shit. Like he had a word for it. His word for it, like I know you call them patterns. A lot of people call them patterns. He called them compounds. And he sat me down one day. He was like, yo, you be compounding, right? I'm like, what are you talking about? He was like, yeah, your syllables rhyme in minimal time. And I was like, okay. And once he like made me aware of that, it became this thing that I was like, cool, I have this weapon that I understand how to use, and I can go like really deep into it. So there's like a few techniques that you've done, and I know you're aware of them because you're doing them on purpose, but I just kind of wanted to talk to you about them, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So there's one thing you do pretty often where I don't know what the word is. It like homonyms, like when you have words that sound the same and they just have different meanings, or you use the
Hmm.
same word over and over. Like I
Yeah.
think like I know you did it on that verse you for that song you had with Pac, that Complex Simplicity, John,
Hmm.
where it's like I think the thought, I can't remember how it goes, but you do that a
Yeah.
lot.
Trying
And
to remember that.
I don't remember how that verse goes, but like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's another one where you're like, I think this might be director's cut. You're like, how many takes does it take to change to
Right. How
take
many
place?
takes does it take for change to take place and change
Yeah,
the flow of the main? You know what I'm saying? Every scene seems the same. It seems like something I've seen. Yeah.
yeah. Like I don't know. I don't think too many people do that thing. I think that one is a real dope one that you do.
Yeah. I just think it comes from like just getting deep in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like when you really like you start like when you're locked in and you're just you just dissect and you dissect more and more and more, and then before you know it, it's like you're just uh, like Logic had a line once where he was just like he says like enter into the sound's inhabitants, and it's like you think about that like you're walking into a sound and it's
Mm-hmm.
like whoa, the sound's inhabitants, right? Like I guess could be comparable to like coding or something. You're in the
Yeah,
program's inhabitants. And I think like that level of deep thought is going to bring you to a place of dissection
right. Yeah,
where
and
you will.
that's how I've always kind of looked at it too, because people, the way they experience words, they're just kind of like, yeah, cool, you said that. That's a thought. But like, if it's not shocking, they don't apply the same value to it. And what I mean by that is like a lot of your stuff, also the way that you describe phobia,
Mhm.
and I did a lot of this as well, where it's like you're just trying to create a very specific visual experience through your words, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna reference the songs that I know best. Like I know you've done this across the discography, but like the water song, where you're
Mhm.
talking about, experiencing water for the first time, basically.
Mhm.
Um, and the way you describe it, like if you're not paying attention to that song, you're just like, cool, this guy is talking about water. But like if you really listen to the words being said, like it just paints such a visual experience. And again, it does it very concisely. Like you're not spending a lot of time in ways where you're like you're bored listening to this. You're presenting this very detailed descriptive idea as though you're reading a book, but in a really cool rap way with the compounds and all of that.
It's
So
yeah,
yeah.
no, it's I found that I learned how to think, right?
Mm-hmm,
Because I didn't go, I couldn't stay in school. I
mm-hmm,
just I can't. Like it's boring. I can't pay attention. I can't be here,
mm-hmm,
you know? So I learned how to think from removing everything that I know about something
mm-hmm,
and observing it from a place of almost I like being a newborn again.
Yeah. You break
What
it
is
down to
what?
its smallest component. So there's a term for that. They call that first principles. Like this is a whole school of
Okay.
thought where you kind of look at it from the basic components, the things you do know and you do understand, and then kind of like build it up. And so it's kind of like you look at things literally first, and then you look at the different pieces of it, and you're like, okay, let's make this make sense from the bottom up.
Yeah.
And that's always been one of the features of how you rhyme that makes you especially compelling, because you'll take a complicated idea and explain it simply. You see what I'm saying? You're like, Aesop is great, but if you don't have the vocabulary to listen to
Mm-hmm.
Aesop, you're not going to understand what he's trying to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he explains simple things in complicated ways, whereas you
Right.
explain complex things in simple ways. And
Right.
I think it comes from like what you just said, like kind of like this simplicity of how you think about it, of breaking it down to its smallest components and then building it up to the complex version of
Well, and yeah, and it's almost that I think that everything is complex, and even nothing is simple.
it.
I mean, nothing is simple. Not for the complex mind.
Mm-hmm.
You
No,
know.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Uh,
And
no, that,
I mean, I think, to some degree, it's also how I approach things, because I do a lot of
mhm.
complicated things. Like I code, I do machine learning stuff, blah, blah, blah. And I always have to decompose it, like break it down into smaller pieces so I can understand how things work before I can work on something. And what I mean by that is like you could sit me down and be like, all right, step by step, here's what we do. I'm not going to do it until I understand it.
You have to understand it on a deeper level.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to
Exactly.
truly under. And with that said, what is coding?
So coding, programming,
But
you know,
before, let me ask you another question tied
yeah.
to that. It fucks my head up because I'm like, okay, you're creating code,
Mhm.
but what what are you using to create the code? What created that
Code.
code?
Yeah.
So what
So
created the code? Like this is a chicken and this is like who made God kind of thing? Who created God?
kind of, to some degree, but no, like, I mean, there's levels to how computer systems work, right? Like there's the binary code level where everything is ones and zeros. There's a level up, it's called like assembly language. I don't think anyone uses it anymore, but it's like it's really difficult to read. And then you get to what we call like these high level languages, like JavaScript, Python, C, blah blah blah. And so um there are things that are built at the base level to make it easier for you to build on top of it. So when you build an operating system, it's built at that base level, and then there's some layer on top of it that you build on. And then the stuff that people like me build is, excuse me, closer to English, right? Like it's a series of instructions that you give to the computer that are interpreted by, some sort of either what's called a compiler or a script interpreter or whatever. Like your web browser is running code. And so, you write a bunch of instructions to tell a computer what to do for a specific thing. And then, Zoom is built this way. Your browser, everything in your phone is built this way. And because I've been doing it for so long, I know a lot of different programming languages, and I can do a lot of different things in a lot of different environments. But to bring it back to rap, actually, it's really similar with how my mind works for coding as when I write rhymes. And what I mean by that is that there are, end of the day, like it's all math to some degree. Because especially when you're talking about compounds, like you're lining up things with
Yeah.
a certain number of syllables and so on. And I think because of the skill set I have with coding, it's kind of what made me really interested in technical rap. And because there's just a lot of similarities with how your mind has to like break down a problem into its smallest parts and then build it back up. Because especially like, let's say you're writing a story rhyme,
Mhm.
you will know the story has a beginning, middle, and end, but how you get there through bars is incredibly difficult. You know what I'm saying? Because especially if you have like a distinct type of style, right? Like if you're like me, like for instance, there's a at one point I was like so heavy into the syllable stuff that like the first pattern I would have at the beginning of the verse would come back at the end, but like so many different ones would have come in between that it sounds like the thing doesn't rhyme, but it actually perfectly rhymes.
Mhm.
And there's a verse I did for Lewis Logic on, he did like a remix to the Dos Factotum song. It was like an 80s remix. He like did a 80s remix of that album.
Mhm.
And I did that. Like the I can't I don't remember if I remember the whole rhyme, but like it was like my body is my temple haunted by spirits and wine, appear hostile to beer goggles, shroud the pyramid's eyes, where an errant disguise stitched by Guinness and Hennessy mixed with his hint of the Jimmy Beam and all American pride. So like you
Mhm.
saw how I was bringing it back. I did that
Mhm.
through the whole verse. And yeah, like it was just one of those things where it's like you don't have to do that. Like no one has to rap that way, right? Like you can rap in a linear way and forget the pattern as you go, and that's fine. But for me, for a while, like that was the only style I was doing. I was like, I have to do these patterns in a way that no one else is doing them. And then ultimately, when I like surveyed the land of rappers, there was only like 3 other rappers I could find that was doing that. Like Lewis was doing it,
Mhm.
Eminem, obviously, because he's rhyme patterns in any way possible. And then this dude, Quell. I don't know if you ever heard of Quell. He's
Well,
incredibly dope.
dope.
Yeah,
Well,
so
dope.
let me tell you a story. When I met Quell, right? This is around that era when like we were all hanging out and everything. And I was in Seattle for this for an internship, like a coding internship. And they had a show and I was invited to the show because I knew some people that were a part of the, promotion company or whatever. And they let me get on stage and rhyme. So I spit a acapella and Quell comes up to me. He was like, you don't have to tell me I'm dope and I ain't got to tell you you're dope because we speak the same language. And then I was like, cool. Like I never met this guy. Like I don't know. And then I saw him rhyme. I was like, oh, he's right. And then at the after party, he sat me down. He was like, spit me everything. Like he just wanted to hear anything I had at the time. And it was one of those experiences, kind of like the experience I had with you, where it was just like, yo, this is someone who is on another level and understands what I'm doing in a really detailed way. And like when you come across people like that, you're inspired by them, you can inspire them as well. And it's just like that is the feeling that I miss in doing this every day. You see what I'm saying? Where like you're just like pushing yourself and then the people around you are pushing themselves and you're like bringing your bars and then they bring their bars and you're like, yo, that was crazy. You know what I mean?
It's
So yeah.
yeah. I think when you're dealing with outer, uh, I guess I'll say just outer pursuits, right? Things that are outside of you.
Mhm.
You're using some kind of element of what exists within you, right? Your
Mhm.
mental capabilities, uh, whatever your tool set is, you're using that and you're applying it to something that's outside of you. But I think there's when it comes to art, it is you are taking. It's almost you're taking what's in you, you're putting
Mhm.
it out, and then it's like you're walking into it. So it's like you just took yourself out of yourself so you can walk into yourself.
Mhm.
And it's just like it's going to be hard to compete with that. You're not going to quite experience your true value that you would. I mean, it's like I don't know. It's like imagine where isn't it different, right? Like, it's okay, like you give a speech, right? And the room is crowded and everyone appreciates the speech. Or you give a performance and the crowd is roaring.
Yeah, it's very different. But whenever I give a talk, I'll be like, yo, make some noise, like before I get it started, because like that's just the frame
That's the
that I'm
rapper in
used.
you.
Yeah, I'm like, yo, I need to
Yeah.
know y'all are here. Like, I need to feel that connection with folks. But yeah, I mean, I obviously have missed the whole art aspect of it, which is why I got it and did that record. And you know, it's been fun to rediscover who I am in that now. Like, I can't rap about struggling with shit. Like, I'm not struggling, you know what I'm saying? So I had to figure out, you know, what do I talk about now? And a lot of it is, you know, a lot of that type of entrepreneurial stuff of like, you know, here's what I've done, here's where I'm going, and here is my experience with all of this. Some of it is, you know, sometimes I just bar up too. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, what does that sound like now? Like, am I still, you know, doing sci-fi raps, or am I, you know, talking about crazy outlandish shit that I do in real life? And it's a combination, right? So it's been a fun journey to just discover, you know, who is 40-year-old Mike King on the mic. You know what I mean? Like, and
What is a day like for you? What is your discipline like? Like for me, I have to force discipline onto myself.
yeah.
The more obligations you have within your day, it's not, you probably don't have to force it as much. It's like you got a bunch of shit you got to do.
Yeah, but you still have to, or at least for me, I still have to have some structure, you know, like, and
Mm,
some things work well and they stick, some don't. You know, for a while I
mhm.
was getting up at 5:30 in the morning and like writing in the morning and preparing for the day and all of that. And then, you know, then it's workout, then it's get dressed, then it's, you know, have meetings. I structure my days where it's like meetings in the morning, then like 1:30 to 4:30 I get to focus on something, then probably like meetings 4:30 to 6, and then, you know, I gotta or I want to hang out with my kids for a little bit, and then dinner, then, you know, maybe do some more writing or whatever. But there has to be structure, because otherwise, excuse me, your goals just end up not happening, right? And so
Mhm.
I've shifted a little bit this year in that I have like my big picture goals, my marker for checking in like every 3 months to make sure I'm making progress. And then I have, for each of those goals, I have 3 things that I can do every day. So as an example, I'm in the middle of writing a book. I write 4 pages every day, because otherwise
Mm.
it's like too big of a undertaking and then it doesn't happen. Um, you know, the thing with rhyming is like, cool, all right, I'm going to write 1 bar every day, just 1 bar. And then that way, at least I have a bunch of material when I go into the studio and I can start bringing things in. But something I want to talk to you about, because you said
Sure.
something in a video that I don't believe.
Okay.
You said you do the head writing thing, like Jay-Z.
Yeah. Yeah.
When did that start?
It started around the time that, I think it was when I found out Jay-Z didn't do, wasn't when I found out that he didn't do it, but it was in the first album I was writing still. I was
Mhm.
still writing things down for the first album. But it started, I think, at around that time. No, I'm sorry. The Human Experience, I was still writing some stuff down. It was after The Human Experience
Okay, that
that I,
makes sense to me. That makes sense to me, because I think that's like like the way you rap is different after Human Experience,
Mhm,
and it's looser for,
mhm.
and that's like people that head write, they sound loose like Jay-Z basically. I'm not saying you sound like Jay-Z,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you know, because like I feel like when you head write, you're not like, you're not saying, okay, what is the, I don't want to say perfect, but like what is the, like you spend more time on a line when you write it down. Whereas with
Mhm,
head writing, it's kind of like you write to say what you're thinking and also to remember. And so
Mhm.
it kind of like allows you to say something less complex than normal. And again, I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
different.
Well, I'll tell you, the interesting thing is if you take something like I don't think it's available anymore, but it
Mhm,
was available. If you take like the Storm
mhm.
song that I did, where it has all these change ups, it has like a house beat, then it drops or whatever. That's all head, and it's all very chorded drift, that accorded to six, a morbid switch, followed by an awkward twist, the force of which can bend all sorts of stiff objects, lost broad a court in it, lift it off of the floor like a sorceress,
Mhm.
circle in orbit, a source of this. Things get so it's very patternized. There's
Respect.
still
I
the
respect that.
technicality there. You know what I mean? And I just think that that comes from the um it's probably hard for us
Mhm,
to not compound or patternize.
mhm. Oh
It's
yeah,
like
definitely.
it's just like this sentence is here standing naked. It's like, oh, or like the hand is out here on its own. Like I'm not going to extend a hand so that it connects.
Yeah.
It's like the mind just starts to function. But
It doesn't sound like
sometimes,
it's rhyming to me if you don't do
yeah,
it.
but sometimes there's a point where you don't want to, because that can be self-defeating. You have to know when it makes sense and when it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like when you're doing something like posers, where it's like, okay, set up, punch.
Mhm,
I'm going to present the issue and now I'm going to end it with my punch kind of, I guess, resolution or ending insult to what I'm saying,
mhm.
where it would be weird for, like, I'm not going to try to get all geeked out on patterns. It's kind of just like,
Nah, I get
okay,
it. Not every song requires it. And so in
mhm,
those cases, that's when I just do twos. You know what I mean? Like I still do it. It's just twos rather than like, sevens, eights, and nines or whatever. Because the what you're saying, to your point, may get lost when you overdo it. Like the standard human person doesn't look to decipher that. They're just like, cool, sounds like you're rapping a fucking grocery list. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's why, the funny thing is where when someone will say something like, um, they'll just say, if someone will write off Eminem, where
mhm.
they'll just say like, there's plenty of rappers that can do, that can do that, and it's just like,
No, they can't. Not like
do
him.
like, yeah, like do what exactly? What specifically are you talking about? And
Mhm.
that's where it's like this person is just hearing a bunch of
Yeah, yeah. I
they
mean,
can't differentiate the skill set and what's what. And
right. Like if you can listen to an Eminem verse and listen to like, some trap rapper verse and be like, they're the same or they're comparable or whatever. It's just like we don't listen with the same ears, right? Like
no, right.
you don't understand what's happening here. It's kind of like if you watch a boxer, right? And only boxing of is like watching Rocky, where it's like haymakers the whole time. And so you
Right.
expect that. You don't understand why Floyd Mayweather is as good as he is, right?
Mhm.
Because there's just like a technique to it. Um, Another thing I used to love that you would do, I don't know if you called them this, but I assumed that you called them this, the paradoxes, where it was
Mm,
like, like the shit that wasn't necessarily possible or whatever.
mhm, mhm.
I used to love those types of bars.
Just brain food, man. It's
Yeah.
just like it's just like just fun to do that type
Mhm.
of shit. And the crew too. The crew was very like the chip that we had on our shoulder. And I don't think it was just us. It was just like I think everybody from that era, it was
Mhm.
just like it's like the way that you felt was like me being greater than you is 2 plus 2 equals 4. And you motherfuckers keep thinking I am 2 plus 2 equals 5. And I keep telling you the sky is up, but you keep telling me it's down. It's fucking up. So imagine the level of frustration after a while that you're like, 2 + 2 = 4. The sky is up, water is wet. And this is the kind of, you know what I mean? Like, and I think this is why, like, we would kind of create like these, what, what, what extent, what picture must I paint to show you how much of a god I am in comparison to you? Like,
Yo, that
this
was
is,
exactly it. It was like, I'm gonna write this verse, and you gonna know right now, like, we do not exist on the same plane of reality. Like, you're gonna
and
hear it.
and you're surrounded by a bunch of other people
Mm-hmm.
who feel the same way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, that's exactly it. And for me, so around that time, like,
And
I
that's,
was,
and let me just
oh,
add this.
God.
I don't know if that was probably was a Philly thing, but that was a New York thing, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that was a thing amongst the cities.
Yeah, of course, of course.
That wasn't a thing like down south in their developmental years. It was different. It was like, it was a more rock the party, blah blah blah. Like all of this competitive, I'm gonna outsmart you, I'm gonna outthink you, This was like New York and other city shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
this was not like,
yeah. And for me, I was in this really weird position. Again, we're talking about formative years for both of us, 18, 19, or whatever. And I also had that situation where I got sucker punched by Vinny Paz. And then it was like, okay, well, I have to doubly prove myself that I'm better than everyone. You know what I mean? It's like, I can't just be the dude that got sucker punched. Like, I have to be the best possible. And so it was like, I mean, I was always better than Vinny Paz at rapping, but like, it was like, I have to showcase this in such a way that it was undeniable. And so it was like, cool, be more creative, come with bars that are just completely mind blowing. Um, beat everyone possible in a battle, like, do the better show. And so for so many years, it was so much like competing with this idea of I just have to be the best because I like started behind the starting line while everyone else kind of just started at the starting line. And I just kind of like forgot about, like, why did I start doing this to begin with? You know what I mean? And then once I was able to start letting that go, I started having more
Mhm.
fun with it and things like that.
And then you can write a song,
Yeah, exactly.
because it's hard to write a song with that, like that drive, that when you're drawing from that place.
Mm-hmm.
That's great for making a name for yourself. It's great to go into battle. That's why I like Disaster so much. I always felt that Disaster came with that kind of, like it was, especially when he was really making his rounds, it was like you can tell, like, this man he's possessed,
Yeah,
like he is taunted by
yeah,
this.
yeah.
You know
He
what I'm
he
saying?
just
And
had complete disdain for the people he was battling. He was like, I need you to know I am better than y'all. And he was. Like,
oh,
he
clearly
he
he
just
was
had so much.
and he was somebody who, where he was coming with the patterns. There was this one battle that he had with QP, actually, and the kid QP choked.
Mm-hmm.
And there was not, I don't know how familiar you are with the battle rap guys, but there's two clean QPs.
No, I
One's
don't know QP. Either
no.
one.
Okay, well, one's a dude from Detroit, like I guess kind of like street guy, and the
Mm-hmm.
other one is, I guess he's a street guy, but it's not, doesn't present that really when he raps. More of a wordy, heady kind of kid or whatever. But anyway, he ends up choking, and just what Disaster did this, it was just, Disaster to me was very much like the full package.
Yeah,
The patterns, the theater, the
just the bars.
yeah, he
I
was my
loved watching
favorite.
that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he was my favorite, I think, for a very long time, and honestly, it may still be today. I haven't caught so much King of the Dot stuff. I've been
Mm-hmm.
actively watching, or what I would think, yeah, he still battles on King of the Dot, I believe. But I've been actively watching more URL stuff. I have
Mhm.
their app, and see, I enjoy battle rap because I think, like, still to this day, because these are the guys that are pushing it, that are taking lyricism to the next level.
Yeah, I agree. I
You
agree.
know,
Yeah, I don't watch them as much as I would like, but like every once in a while, I just kind of go down the rabbit hole and watch a bunch of them. And the problem is, it's kind of like if you're starting MCU movies in the middle, like you got to know, like, because they'll have like inside jokes and shit, and I'm just like, what are you talking about?
right, right.
But it's so dope. It's such a dope format. I really appreciate where they've taken it. Cause at first everyone was like, oh, there's no beats and it's all written and da da da. It's like, yo, it's entertaining. That's
And it
all I'm here
allows for,
for.
yeah, and it allows for a lot more to take place
Yeah.
because they remove the beat.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
know,
and
so
and it being fully written, like you just can do more, right?
mhm.
Like, and like dudes would be like, yeah, uh, if you go watch this video at 5 minutes and 27 seconds, and you're wearing this shirt, like this whole self-referential thing is just so interesting. I really appreciate what they're doing.
Yeah.
Um, Question for you:
Yep.
what would you say is the difference between I Am Many and Many Styles?
Uh, well, I think that Many Styles was just somebody who was in love with rapping, you know, just in
Uh-huh.
love with rapping. Because you learn, like, I guess you realize you're an artist when you can begin to see what the different rappers are doing. And then you
Mhm,
realize, like, okay, like, all right, we're all in the park smoking L's with the boombox. I always had a boombox on me. So we're all
mhm,
like getting drunk and smoking pod as kids, whatever. But they're not, I don't think they're hearing this the way I'm hearing it. I don't think they're able to recognize, like, they cannot emulate Busta Rhymes. I can emulate Busta Rhymes. I
mhm.
could also spit that RZA verse that everybody, you know, uh, with the two times the millennium, what the fuck is that shit? On the Busta Simeon, half a millennium, two chips, microchips. So, do you know that RZA verse I'm talking about? It's
Yeah,
all mumbled and shit. Like,
yeah,
I used to be
yeah.
able to kick that shit. So it's like you realize that it's like all these styles, like, I see what each of them are doing.
Mhm,
I could do all of these. I could write a rhyme in all of these different ways. Whereas a lot of rappers, they kind of have their technique, and that's like where it stops.
mhm,
But every now and then you get those people who are, Eminem's first album, he was very what I call template rapping. It was
mhm,
very dun, 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 you
mhm,
know. And then by the time he gets to the second, you're like, oh, he's breaking out of those
mhm.
very, you know, where there's not you can do it, I can. I mean, maybe now, of course, it's a little bit different, but around this time, rappers were very stuck in their style.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? That they couldn't,
Yeah, they had like a specific brand of how they did it, and that was it. There was no
yeah.
like
And
variance to it.
and most of them were just using somebody else's brand, which made it worse. And they had in that time they had tend to be using the most simplistic version. It was like Jada was dope because he was neat, but it had a punch to it. It had
Mhm.
flavor. It might have had some kind of humor to it. When my
Yep.
coke comes in, they got to use the scales they used to weigh the whales with. I mean, this is, you know what I'm saying? This is funny. This is entertaining. This is fun.
Mhm.
People were emulating it, but they were removing everything that made it unique.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna rap very straightforward, and we're gonna just take out all of the fucking ingredients, all of the seasoning. But anyway, back to your question. Yeah, like Many Styles was somebody who realized that I recognize all of these techniques that all of these different rappers are doing, and I have the ability to do them.
Mhm.
And I Am Many, I guess, was somebody where it was just like just a certain vision this grand vision of just like I am many, and it's an interesting thing because I was once listening to Jordan Peterson talk, and he was talking about how it's hard for creatives to settle down on an identity.
Mm-hmm. It's too many
Um,
options.
yeah, where it's just like it's and he breaks it, you know, the way he gets into things, but you know, and I think that that's what kind of at the root of I am many, where it's just like, you know, who am I not?
Yeah,
You know, it's 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 hard to explain, but it's just this kind of this concept. I am many, strength in numbers, just this unity movement esque kind of vision.
mm-hmm.
And I was just like, I'm gonna take that on as an identity. This
That's cool.
multiple identity instead of multiple styles. It's like multiple identities, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
Yeah, and so thematically, obviously, your music changed a lot. You know, like I remember songs like "I Got the Light," "This Is Not
Hmm.
for You," you know,
Hmm.
just like your standard like "I'm better than you" shit, but it was
Hmm.
awesome. Um, and then the Mini Styles record, which I actually re-listened to today on YouTube. I think the record, what's the record? They Don't Know. Is that what it's called? I
Hmm.
think that record is probably a precursor to some of the subject matter you had like after you switched to I Am Any, and that you know, you're kind of examining a lot of things. I think the last verse you're talking about religion and things like
Hmm.
that. And so thematically, you move more towards like questioning society, anarchy, things like that. Um, Embracing like nonconformism and just kind of like, you know, examining who you are as a person, right? And it makes
Yeah,
sense because you've matured and all that.
yeah, and you know, we have things. I think most of us, we have things that we stand for, we have things that we believe in,
Mm-hmm.
we have our convictions. And the thing is as we go through life and the more the more I mature and the more I evolve, you have to learn to take a step back where because even in going through that, if like you're a very opinionated person or you have strong convictions,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you got to take a step back and just like really understand and just be like, yo, dude, like, what the fuck? Like, what, like, what makes you think, like, what the fuck do you know? Like, you know what you know,
Mm-hmm.
but what the fuck do you know? It's
Right.
like, and that's why when I do these videos, it was like I had options. Like, what am I going to talk about? Am I going to go to political route? Am I going to go to religious route? Am I going to go this route? And it's like, yo, you know art, you know music. Like, do that. You know that.
Yeah.
Like everything else is kind of just like you gotta just like you gotta check yourself a little bit. So I mean it's important I think to express your views in your music, but
Mm-hmm.
like as far as just having strong convictions, it's like leave a lot of room for the opportunity that you could be wrong,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And I
Or your ideas can change. You know what I mean? Like, and um, you know, I like to believe in this idea of strong beliefs loosely held. And what I mean by that is like, you know, yes, have your convictions, but also be open to evidence that you're wrong and then changing your mind. Because I think there's this idea, especially in like, you know, Black and Latino communities, is that you can't change your mind. Like if you
Mhm,
change your mind, you're seen as weak because someone had imposed their will upon you or something like that. And first of all, it's stupid. Second of
mhm.
all, you know, if there's evidence that proves what you're thinking is wrong, it only works better if you examine that evidence and then continue to learn from it, because
Yeah, I
otherwise
came
you
up
just
with it.
don't grow.
Yeah, I came up with like a saying. I mean, I don't know if it existed before me, but whatever. I just thought where I think I said something like, people want to make what they found true instead of trying to find the truth.
Right. Right. They
So
want to
they
make
just
what
want to,
they found fit what they think.
yeah. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, I'm going to fight to make this, like, and that's what you see on Facebook, where it was like,
Oh, of course.
I was getting sucked into so much of this shit where it was just like, I had to take a step back and be like, yo, dude, what is this? Like, this is a, what do you, this is a trap. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, all of this bickering and all of this, like, everything is so like, it's like the place where everybody meets to discuss how much they, how different they are. Like, this is the climate now,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And it's just like, sometimes you got to take a step back and just be like, yo, let's talk about what makes us the same. Let's talk
Yeah.
about let's bring forth issues that, and that's why I talk about hip hop, because it's like, whatever your political views are, you know, like whatever, pro vaccine, not about, like, all of these issues, right? That everybody's like, we want to kill each other over.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a friend of mine on Facebook or on Instagram, you probably like rap.
Yeah. So let's talk about
Let's talk about
rap.
rap.
Yo, right about now is the greatest writer's block song ever.
Thank you.
Nah, because the way you flipped it, because obviously I can tell you wrote that. You're like, I have no idea what to write about. But like the way you wrote it, it was so dope.
Thank you. Yeah, it was truly, it was poetry in motion, like
Yeah.
in the literal sense.
Yeah. It's like you can watch your mind like deducing this as you're going. So I don't know. It's just like a perfectly self-aware song without like being in your face and being like corny, because you know a lot of self-aware shit can come across as corny, but it was really dope.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And that,
Yeah.
you know, in one of the videos I recorded today, where I basically mentioned, like, you know, as artists, and we have to do to the fullest what we're good at.
Mm-hmm.
So many, so many people get like, they're gonna get caught up in, like, I remember meeting this group once, and they were just like, you know, I make music for the mind, but it's also for the soul, and it's also for the feet. So you could dance to it in a club, but it's spiritually healing, and it's gonna make you think. And
Mm.
I'm like, yeah, and all three of those categories are not gonna listen to it. Because if they want the spiritual, they're not coming to you.
Right.
It's not gonna come with a club beat. And if they want the club, it ain't gonna come with a spiritual message.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so there's these, sometimes it's just kind of like, you know, I hear you say, like, I hear you tell me about these things, and it reminds me of, like, the kind of, like, the way my mind works. And it's like, of course we evolve, but it's important to always remember, like, what your traits are,
Mm-hmm.
and just go all the way with them,
Yeah,
you
I agree
know?
with that. I agree with that. Um,
Yeah.
what was I gonna ask you? Oh, you pretty much battled everybody. Who is somebody that you didn't want to battle?
I didn't think I wanted to battle Sea Rays. I wasn't ready for it.
Mm-hmm. I
The
heard about
battles,
that one. I didn't. I never saw it, but yeah,
yeah.
tell us about that.
The battles that I lost were ones that, if ever I had something prepared for the opponent,
Mm-hmm.
I always won those. But whenever I didn't have something prepared, it was like, which makes sense. I mean, it's like, if someone's got something prepared for you, you have nothing for them. It's like, you got to have a good rebuttal. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? But every time I came with something prepared, and I didn't have anything prepared for him, and he had shit prepared for me. He
Mm-hmm.
had one hell of a thing prepared for me. So I remember the best I was able to do, I think the most powerful line, he had like an orange hat on, and he was sweating. And I said something like, "You aren't loose, I'll squeeze the sweat from your hat and make orange juice," you know, which was good because it was on the spot,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But he had, like, generally when people would go up against me, they would talk about, um, they would try to tear down the spiritual, like try to mock that,
Mm-hmm.
to make the, you know, like, they're going to take the strength and turn it into your weakness.
Right.
So he did something like that where he mocked that. and then like it was so tiring for him that he fell on the floor. So he did something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and then he got that battle. But then after that he didn't want to battle after that.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, if ever we're gonna battle again, it's gonna
Yeah,
be
y'all
like
just
a
rapped.
truce.
Yeah, y'all. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, that battle, the second Spiral Lounge battle that I saw you at, and you ended up winning the whole thing. It was like I was actually in that one. It was like
Mm,
a All Stars joint or whatever, and you and y'all two matched up, but you just
mhm,
rapped, and
mhm,
yeah, and then you went to the next round, and it was you and Technique at the end, and then
mhm.
you won.
Okay.
Um, Yeah. So the thing about Walls is he's just like such a dynamic dude, and he is incredible at freestyling in addition to having, endless material. So it's
Mhm.
like you have no idea what he's gonna say, and you know what I mean. Like it's also just gonna be ill, and so you're just like, even if you're prepared, are you really prepared to battle C-Rays?
I wish I was prepared because after that, I had oh, I had so many fucking lines that it was like, if this happens again,
Hmm.
watch. I had so much fucking shit, and it would have went over well too.
Hmm.
And one battle I remember too. I remember Walls versus Technique actually at a Rocksteady event,
Hmm.
and I was with Walls before the battle, and he was like, you could tell there was like a frustration because it was just like, how am I going to get my shit to come across to this crowd?
Hmm. Yeah,
Where
yeah,
Technique style was very, it's going to come
abrasive.
across to anybody. He's going to be like, you look like a, you know what I mean? And it's just like very easy
Yeah,
and
Tech,
very effective.
right. And Tech, he was kind of like, um, he didn't have as much of regard for the beat. Like he was
Hmm.
gonna say the bar in such a way that it cuts through the beat. In
Hmm.
addition to it being like some shocking shit, like I hope someone you love dies or some shit like that, and you're just like, come on, man. Like, what do you even say? You know what I'm saying? So
His shock value was on like level 20.
yeah, he was super effective in that way. Um, but yeah, like, um, I mean, when I battled you, it was like circumstances was partially why I won. Cause like I said, I
Mm-hmm.
was fucking terrified. I was like, I looked up to this guy and he has all these bars and shit. And like then you in the situation was it was a 1 round battle and you went first and you explained this on the other video and then I just had like 4 lines specifically for you.
Right,
And I
right.
was like, if this goes to a second round, like I don't know if I have anything else to say here. But
And I had rebuttals for those lines too. I had rebuttals for them. And I should have pushed harder because I feel like Penn was at the breaking point because the crowd was cheering for one more round.
yeah, and I was
And
like
then
walking away, like, no.
I let up off the gas. I should have fucking just stood with it. I feel like we would have got one more round. But yeah, those were, and uh, if you have nothing prepared and you know what I mean, and someone else does, you're at a disadvantage.
Mhm.
You better come up with some amazing shit on the spot,
I
you
mean,
know?
there's been times where like people being prepared has like backfired horribly, right? Like there was one time in
Mm,
that brainstorm shit where this kid, he had like a whole verse and he like raps in Hebrew and shit.
mm.
And as soon as that happened, I was like, oh, I'm gonna discount this whole shit with 1 bar. And I was like, that Hebrew shit, that's a good plan of attack. Now the whole crowd won't understand that you're whack. And it was a rap for that kid.
That's dope, though.
You know what I mean? Like, so that's what I'm saying. Like, it's such a dynamic situation where if you can be tuned in, you can recover pretty
And
easily.
that's the thing too. Comfortability is important because if you could calm your nerves and get
Mm-hmm.
yourself to a comfortable place, it's gonna be a lot easier for you to rebuttal.
Yeah. And I remember like there was one time I was in bragging rights and you were there and I think it was my first time And I was kind of like overexcited. You were in the front. You were like, calm down, calm down. And then I locked in. I just bodied that round. And
Nice.
I think that was the night that Jen showed up though. So then,
Okay.
I mean, we know
No,
how
that was
Jen.
a hooked battle.
Nah. It was bragging rights too. It was his
Okay.
first bragging rights. And like I'd heard about him because I heard about your battle with him.
Okay.
And I was ready for him, but it was like you described. It was such a different thing that any line he would say would get an outsized response. And
Yeah, it's very much.
it's not to discredit him
Yeah.
because he was good,
Yeah.
but I beat him several times and did not win.
Yeah. It was like remove that element. And I think the first, I mean, I don't know that well, but I feel like I remember Esoteric battling him and going so
Oh yeah.
hard
Yeah, I was
with
there for
the
that.
Asian shit
Yeah,
that it was
that was
like,
just racist.
yeah.
It was, like that's the thing. Esso was a surprisingly effective battler. So
Mm,
we all went up there for the Super Bowl battle that one year, and he tore through everybody. Like I think he drew
wow.
Jen first, and we were like, "Oh, this will be over quick." No, Jen got smashed,
Mhm.
and like none of Jen's rebuttals were working in Boston. And it's also a function of Esso being like a hometown hero up there, but he battled PH, beat him. He battled like a bunch of people that you're like, how would Esoteric ever beat anyone like this?
Mhm.
And it was just surprising to see. Um,
What Jones did to Jin, it was like that was crazy.
Sirius Jones?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was like that was a bad, like he took a serious L,
yeah, yeah.
that one. And I
I
think that
mean,
was the end. Actually, I think he tried to.
well,
I
he
don't know if
was
he
he was
battled
doing
after
other
that.
things. He was doing other things. Like he was huge in China, and then I think he became like a born again Christian, and like he had a whole life. You know what I mean? Plus, he was in the Fast and the Furious. Um, like he was just doing a whole bunch of things. So I don't, Jen did his thing. He came and he got signed to Rough Riders. Like you can't really hate on what he accomplished.
Of course not. Yeah, it was very. He had battling took him pretty far.
Yeah, yeah.
Um. Well, yeah, man. Listen, if there's anything you want to add before wrapping up, or anything you want to, maybe there's another question, or I mean, I have some stuff. I guess I'll. Um. So we have iconic,
Mm-hmm.
and what is on the agenda for I pull rank?
Uh, keep making money. Nah, like we're just kind of trying to keep growing the business, trying to double revenue again. And just what I want to do is use that as the engine for all this other stuff that I'm doing. Cause like I'm actually about to launch this new platform called Sidetrack, which is like you know cameo.com where you can like get a famous person to do a video, like a happy birthday video or whatever. I'm trying to
Mhm.
make something like that for getting rappers as features. So as an example, let's
Mm.
say I wanted to get a verse from Ghostface. Right now I gotta like hit up someone that knows his manager and all that like networking stuff. When I'm sure if Ghostface just had verses of his that he wanted to sell, he would just put them somewhere and I could just buy it, right? So I'm trying to make the platform for that.
That's
And
smart. That's ill.
yeah, so I'm gonna launch that in the next couple months, and that's gonna be like iPull Rank built it and promotes it. Um, and yeah, I just want to continue to grow that and make more businesses out of it.
Mhm.
I'm gonna use it to bring back UGHH. I'm gonna use it for building up bestrapperever.com, which isn't just meant to be like a website for me. What I'm trying
Mhm.
to do is kind of build an algorithm to quantify how you determine who the best rapper ever is. And what I mean by that is like, how in sports they have all the analytic stuff that they do now, where it's like you know, this basketball player is going to achieve this based on all these metrics. I want to do the same thing for rap. So you can see like, okay, side by side, rapper you don't know versus a rapper you do know. Like, how good is this person in an objective way?
Nice.
And so then that way we can like create all types of content around that, kind of like that site 538 does around a bunch of other different data stuff. So yeah, I'm just doing a lot of things that interest me that I'm trying to turn into businesses. And also I'm just gonna keep trying to release records every 3 months just because I like
Nice.
to.
Excellent. Good stuff, man.
Yeah, man. So yeah, yo,
Well,
thanks for having me. This is awesome. It's been great to just talk about rap shit and life shit. And I'm excited to see what you do with all this content stuff that you're doing. And I just want to see it grow. Let me know how I can help. And that's it.
I'll be coming to you.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, brother. Listen, thanks for being the first guest.
Of course. This
It's
is Mike
history in the
King
making.
signing off.
Yes, sir. All right, brother. I'll be in touch. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, later. I'm gonna shut
All
this
right,
off.
later.